All right, 11.2 inference about two means. So as always, we're going to work through all of our different pieces. Proportion we did in 11.1. We look at means and then standard deviation. But we do have to separate the means into dependent and independent sections. So we want to look there at those pieces. Okay. All right, so statistical inference methods on matched pairs use the same as an inference on a single population proportion mean, except that we're just going to look at the analyzed differences here for those things. Okay, so we use the following steps. The sample needs to be from simple random sampling, and the data from a matched pairs design. Okay, do they need them to be dependent? And then our sample size, no outliers, and larger than 30 or normally distributed. Okay, so we still have here our two-tailed, left-tailed, right-tailed, so we can see those pieces. Now again, we're dealing with mu, D there for dependent on those. Okay. All right, so since we're using mu, we're talking about a t-test statistic for those pieces. Okay. All right. And so we still have all of our critical values and how we're going to look at those pieces. Okay. And so we'll do things. We're going to use the calculator to determine a lot of these items, but we're going to look here how to do those pieces. Okay. Excuse me. All right, so all of those types of things still remain the same here, okay? All right, so we have Professor Andy Neal. He's looking at some pieces. Sorry about that. And looking at 12 students, looking at dominance in hand with those, okay? And so they're flipping a coin and determining reaction time. So we want to construct a test at a significance of 0.05 on those, okay? And so they came up with this table of values here. So we're going to use those here in just a moment. All right, now we want to compute the differences. And so we want to look at x minus y on these pieces, and that's going to be important. And so they do that here. Now we are going to do this, but we're going to put it in our table, okay? And let the calculator do that work. So we're going to go into stat, and we're going to actually need to edit. So number one there, we're going to edit here. Now I've already done this for us. So we have those pieces. Now L1 there, we already have all those in. You see that if you look at your thing on the screen, you'll see those pieces, all right? Now for L3, you notice I have some information in there as well. So we'll look at that in just a second. So this one was L1, this one was L2. All right, and so here they did those minus. So what we're going to do up in L3 is going to do L1 minus L2, and that's going to go into L3, okay? Now, to do that, you just go up and highlight the L3 up here, and then in the bottom down here, I'm going to press clear, because I already have the stuff here. You see the stuff's not going to change. We're going to hit second number 1 minus second number 2. So now you can see I have L1 minus L2 in our L3 place. And press enter, and it preloads all that for us. We don't have to go through and do all that subtraction ourselves. The calculator will do that for me, okay? All right, now it's going to look for some things. So let's just go ahead and do the calculator part here for us, all right? So we've already filled in. So now for our tests, we want to do stat over to test. Okay, so we're going to go back to stat over to test, and then we want to do a t-test. So go down to t-test. All right. Now we have the data in there. Okay, that's important to know for those pieces. All right, so we already have the data. We don't have the statistics. Now, if they gave us the statistics, we would move over, but we don't. We have the data. Now, we're looking compared to 0 because that's what we have here on our screen, right? We're looking at being less than 0 for those pieces. And typically, it's probably going to be 0, but we'll look at each problem significantly there. Okay? All right, now this time we're looking at our list of L3, right? That's where we want to have things. We want to be in L3 because we're looking at that difference. We have a frequency of 1, and then we want to be less than. So that gives us kind of our piece there. We can see we have our mu is less than our mu naught, which is 0. And so again, that matches what we just did up here. We talked about right here for our pieces, okay? So then we just want to calculate from there, okay? So that's going to give us our t-test statistic, and it's going to give us our p-value straight from the get-go on those pieces, okay? Excuse me. All right, now it gives some other values here. You see a D bar. Well, that's our X bar as well. It's negative 0.013. We have that right up here as well. And then our S sub D is on there also. So we have that information if we need it. Now they go through and plot all these things and compare everything on those. We want to start looking at these. We know it's a left-held. All right, so our level of significance is 0.05 on those. Okay, and so our test statistic again is 2.788, or in our case here, 2.775 or 6 on those. So all about how we round and where we round to. So pay attention to those details. Okay, now if we go, because we're using our t values, and look at 0.05 and the negative on that for 11 degrees of freedom, because there were 10 items, we get negative 1.796. Well, since our test statistic t is less than that in this case, it's in our blue area of our graph there, we can reject the null hypothesis. Okay. All right, now what about the p-value? All right, so we go through, we look at all those things, and then we calculate where they're at, okay, on those. Now, we have the p-value already. It's 0.009. Okay, that's a very small number on those things. But since it is really small, we know that we're going to be able to reject that, okay? So they got the same numbers we did here using StatCrunch, but since our p-value is less than 0.01 with those, then we're going to be able to reject the null hypothesis for those. Okay? All right, actually, it's because it's less than 0.05, because that was our significance level on those pieces. All right. Now, we also need to be able to construct confidence intervals. And so here we have our formulas for our lower and upper bound. But again, we're going to let that calculator do that work for us here today and see how it goes from there. Okay. All right. Now, again, they are still using the table on these pieces. And so let's look at what we need. So, so this was for our test. So this is for our interval. Okay. All right, so for our interval, again, we're going to go stat over to tests. And then this time we're going to go down to the t interval. Okay, so stat over to tests and down to our t interval. Okay, I guess I didn't need the dash there. That's not actually in there. Now, again, we are looking at the data. We already had that in our L1, L2, L3 there for us, so we didn't have to re-enter that, right? We're using the same graph on those, but if they gave you new data, we would do that. All right, so we have, we're looking at our L3 because we're looking at the difference. We have our frequency of 1, and then we want a 95%, so 0.95. We can calculate here, so we can see that our lower bound should be a negative 0.0236, and our upper should be a negative 0.0027. Okay. Now they go through again and do all this by hand, which is we can as well. And you see they get the same numbers that we did, negative 0.0236 and negative 0.0028. Now we got 27, 28. Those things are just rounding errors on that. Okay. so we know then we have all those pieces. Okay, so here they also do it in the calculator. And they get the same results that we did. All right. So those are the things you're going to need for 11.2.